So every now and then I have a bit of a passionate flame, kind of like that one, that pops up in my head that overwhelms me to the point that I'm like, I need to just turn on the camera and make a video. And honestly, this one might turn out to be just a whole lot of nothing and hot air, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how BMX and being in the BMX industry is no different than being in any other industry. Or I guess to rephrase that in a better way, a more easy to digest way, there are a lot of similarities between the BMX world and other industries that exist out there, and a lot of common ground between all of them in the way people have to act, the way people have to toe the line, and the way people have to do different things just to exist in this world that they may not believe in or may not enjoy, and they do it knowing that they're doing it in order to sustain where they're at and progress in that. Happens everywhere. And I think it's something that a lot of people don't think about or see. And, you know, a perfect example of this are people who otherwise are not or would not be friends or be hyping each other up on the internet unless there was some sort of connection that could gain them ground and move them forward in their proverbial BMX chess game of trying to get to whatever goal they're at. And in doing so, it is something that a lot of people take part in, even outside of being involved with the industry or companies or anything like that. But it's something that absolutely exists everywhere, and we see it everywhere. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's like a bad thing, but I'm saying that I see it, and I see you, and I see people who are commenting on other people's stuff who they would otherwise never comment on, with fire emojis and hyping up people who they'd never otherwise be hyping up. And, you know, there's probably situations where someone gets involved with a company and they then recognize someone else who is also involved with that company and get stoked on them. And that's awesome. And that's a great symbiotic relationship that can happen with things. But what I find just a little weird, is when people who absolutely are not, you know, outwardly fans of a certain type of riding or a certain person or whatever it might be, then all of a sudden are best friends because they're now teammates with that person. And it is advantageous to them to be in that position and become best friends with that person and promote them and hype them up. And you could just throw the argument right back at me right now of, well, that's what you do when you're on a team with somebody. And I absolutely agree. It's just a little weird, but it's something that exists in every single other industry that's out there and every other job that you could have, where you go to work and you're friendly with your coworkers and you're cordial with them because they're your coworkers and you have to. And if you said the things that were actually on your mind, you would get reprimanded, fired, written up, whatever it might actually be. And I guess what I'm getting at with this is that I don't have any problems with that, but what I have a problem with is when that is status quo and then it becomes weird to actually speak your mind or be critical of anything. And I've fallen into this trap myself of where I used to be very against meme pages in BMX because I felt like they perpetuated hate in BMX, and I still feel that way about certain aspects of it. And maybe it's just that it's gotten way less hate for the sake of hate and more of like actually trying to be funny and make jokes rather than using a meme page as a scapegoat to get your actual feelings out there and your actual hate out there under the guise of it being a joke. But we're in a place now where it's like, man, there's definitely a ebb and a flow and a pendulum that goes both directions in this case. And it's just one of the things that happen in BMX that just feel a little weird. And then the aspects of towing the line when you ride for certain companies, where people will just immediately say, this is the best thing that exists out there. This part is the best. This company's, like, shoes are a huge one, and we don't see it as much because there's not as many shoes out there in the BMX world, but we have definitely all seen people who are like, these are the best shoes that exist, even though you can just tell by looking at them that they suck. And we don't see it as much right now because there's definitely, like I just said, not as many shoe companies that support in BMX. And once again, to play my own devil's advocate, because what I love about doing these is that I can, in the moment, argue with myself and throw the other side into there. And the other side of that would be, well, if somebody's getting support from a company, then obviously they should support that company too. And it's a good thing when anybody gets any type of support through the BMX world these days, because we have to be honest, there's less and less of it going around or even available in the BMX world. But what I find weird about it is whenever it is, this is the best thing ever. And I just feel like it's an integrity thing. When I work with a company, I do not say something is the best that exists unless I wholeheartedly believe it. I might put a question in a YouTube title or a thumbnail that helps generate some more attention to it, but I never will outwardly say, this is the best blank in BMX. This is the best. I don't have anything close by that I could use as an example, but like, this is the best blank in BMX. Like, I don't say that unless I actually believe it. And I carefully curate my words so that they accurately reflect my feelings on things. And I think that there has been a line that has been either super blurred or completely erased in BMX, that basically people just work with a company and say whatever is the best thing that exists, regardless of whether or not they believe it, because it helps keep them where they're at. And towing the line, just like in terms of hyping people up that you might not necessarily care about, hyping up the parts that you ride of the company that you ride for helps you out, so you're going to keep doing it. And then we see other people doing it, and just like with the whole hyping teammates up and hyping up people that you probably wouldn't if you weren't in that position, just like I said, how it's not that bothers me, it's that has become the cultural norm in BMX, and that it's an accepted thing by everyone. That's just like people who know that these things are not the best, but when someone says it's the best, they go on the post and they leave the fire emojis, and there's never any kind of check to be like, look, we all know that thing isn't the best, and you're saying it's the best. And we all know, and we all have, it's like this unspoken agreement between people that's like, yeah, we know it's not the best, but we just accept that the person's saying that because we want them to keep getting support, or we don't want to stir anything up. Well, I've found through my journey in BMX that I want to talk about these things, because the more we talk about them, the better things can be. And the more that we actually talk about certain things that are wrong, the better they can get, and the more potential there is for those things to be improved. If everything that exists in BMX is the best thing ever, then there is no range in anything, and it's all the best thing ever, and there's no possibilities for improvement because it is all the best thing ever. And that's just not simply true. We all know that there's a range in stuff out there. We all know that there's a quality like spectrum where you can buy the cheapest, worst thing possible, and you can buy the most expensive, best thing possible. But it really feels like everything in between is the best thing ever, according to whoever you're talking to. And I think there's definitely some stuff in the YouTube world where we do see people trying to claim that certain things are the best when they're not. And it happens in every single industry that exists. These parallels are everywhere. And it just goes to show like how, as a society, how far from critical thinking we have gotten as a society, because in the world of cancel culture and political correctness, people are afraid to even speak up when something is wrong. And we're definitely coming to a place where people outside of BMX are standing up for the things that they believe in and speaking out whenever they see something that is wrong. And I guess me being the person I am with the character that I like to think I have, I want to bring attention to some of those things. And so I was just sitting here thinking about this aspect of BMX and how there's so many people who just toe the line because they want to stay where they're at and they're scared to lose their paychecks, and they don't want people to be upset with them, that there's never any type of being critical towards anything. And I think that we will have a really hard time moving forward and progressing things if we're never critical of anything. And I guess I'm also a victim of that too, because I tend to shy away from the types of like talking about, parts, and just I tend to shy away from just saying that things are bad. And I try to more focus on the positives in things. So either way, I think that there's space in BMX to be critical without being a jerk, or without lying, or without being dishonest and disingenuous. I think that there's ways to talk about these things without calling them the best ever, or without being fake. It's the fakeness that is weird to me. It's the fakeness that it doesn't sit right with me. And when I see people who are being fake, I'm like, man, how do people not see through this? And I guess that's the real problem that I have with things. We live in a world where when there's like super crazy stuff thrown at us, there's a lot of people that question it. And there's a lot of people that will push back. But there's also a lot of people who just go along with the flow and are like, well, that's what was told to me, so that's what's reality, and I'm not going to question it. And I think in the BMX world, there's so much that goes on that people don't question, have no reason to question, don't have any type of reason to second guess or think twice about any of it, that they think that it's reality when it's just not. And I could talk in depth about those things for sure. Like, there's so much of it and so many examples that are popping up in my head. But perfect examples are the things that I've talked about now, where there's people who ride for companies that say, or don't even ride for companies, there's people who talk about stuff and say that it's the best, or just say that it's better than it is, when it's just not the reality. There's people who are out there hyping people up that if they didn't have some type of connection with them through a company or some type of way that they could help that person, they're not saying anything. And that is the reality of the entire world that we live in. And I guess what I'm getting at here is that BMX in a lot of ways is no different than most other industries that are out there. And I make videos like this to call attention to it, but also to say that like this thing that we love, this thing that we are so passionate about that is BMX should be completely different than everything else that exists, because we should want it to be, and we shouldn't want to just let it fall into the same BS that the rest of the world deals with, because BMX is genuinely a unique thing in so many ways that I don't know if anything other than another action sport could completely parallel with it and teach you about so many aspects of life or industry or community or yourself, or just, we all know that spiel. I've talked about it so many times, but BMX is different than anything else in the world. And I don't know that anything outside of other action sports could even come close other than music. Music is as close as I've seen things get. And to prevent myself from rambling, what I'm getting at is that we should all look at BMX as the special thing that it is to us and try to not let us fall into the same pits that other industries do and just become NPCs that are like, well, everything's the best, nothing's bad, everything's awesome, everyone's awesome, and basically become the people from the Lego movie singing the everything is awesome song every single day, as we never talk about any of the things that need to be talked about, because we go through life just looking at the silver linings and completely ignoring the fire underneath them that's creating whatever shitstorm we're talking about today. So, like I said at the beginning of this one, it's probably going to be a bunch of hot air, but at the very least, it's something to think about. And when you're scrolling through Instagram and you're seeing just thoughtless comments for the sake of interaction, that's what you're seeing. And if there's anything I could suggest with it, is that we just need to be more thoughtful about whatever in BMX and not let it become as much of a rat race as it has, and not be as scared to talk about things that are wrong whenever they should be talked about. So I'm going to prevent myself from rambling any further. I'm going to hope that you enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that I combated my own ideas with the opposite side of them enough that I'm able to have these thoughts and feelings, because I firmly believe that if you are not able to argue the other side of your opinion, you have no right to that opinion, because you should understand and be able to articulate both sides of something before you can give a valid thought towards it and opinion about something. So either way, thanks for tuning in. Let me hear your thoughts in the comments, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow for another video. Goodbye.